Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the famous Domino Jazz Club here in the heart of the West Village here in New York City. Blessing the band stage this week is a very iconic brass band who hails from New Orleans, and they've been celebrating almost 50 years, the Dirty Dozen Brass Band. Now, during the late 1970s, there was a shortage of brass bands, and what these gentlemen decided to do was they tried to infuse hip-hop, funk, blues, gospel, and brought it to a contemporary form. In fact, one of the earliest champions of this band was the legendary jazz impresario George Wein. Now, over the last 50 years, these guys have recorded and toured with the likes of the great B.B. King, Bonnie Raitt, Elvis Costello. The names go on and on. Tonight I had a chance to sit down and break bread with three of the co-founding members of the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, Mr. Roger Lewis, Mr. Gregory Davis, and Mr. Kirk Joesph. We talk about the origins of how this band changed the game of brass bands, as well as we sit down and talk about how the origins of the Caribbean, as well as the kinfolk of New Orleans, made this band a very international group. Also, we sit down and reflect on the importance of the second line, as well as we sit down and talk about some of the most important musical influences, the horns. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, performing live here at the Domino, here in the West Village, here in New York City, here on the Pace Report. Roger, I am under understanding in 1977, disco and funk and punk were the dominant music in the country.
Right.
And out of a necessity of your heritage and the music that you grew up with, the Dirty Dozen Brass Band kind of came together by accident.
I guess you can kind of put it like that. See, there was a guy by the name of Benny Jones, because he the one started the Dirty Dozen Brass Band. It was a group called, first it was the original six-war Dirty Dozen Brass Band, and he kind of got different musicians to play their functions and whatnot, and some of the musicians were Gregory Davis, Cyril Savin, Andrew Green, all of these guys, Janelle Marshall, Lionel Baptiste, of course Benny Jones, the leader, Ephraim Towns, Kirk Joesph, Kevin Harris, Cyril Savin. Well, we were just cast called to make what we call these second line parades, which is a 4-hour parade that's put on by a social and pleasure club, which back in the day was benevolent society groups that came together during, like in the 40s and the 50s and 30s, because black folks couldn't buy insurance and they needed a little help, so they put the benevolent society groups together to come to aid.
Okay.
See, and they merged into what we call social and pleasure clubs. They dress up in their costumes and whatnot. I don't know if you've ever been to New Orleans. And they have these second line parades that last about 4 hours, man. You be doing it. Well, anyway, as things went on, there was a guy by Charles Joesph. He was another guy, which is Kirk Joesph, the sousaphone player's brother. The early band consists of, when we start organizing the band. All these other guys was a part of the band, but the band wasn't organized, like really organized, So Charles Joesph was a guy that was taking class. I was taking classes at Southern University at the time, and he was taking classes, and we was always coming together and play with Benny Jones would put this band together. So I told Charles one day, I said, man, we always playing together. I said, we got cast, in and out and whatnot, so we ought to get together and organize and make a real band. That was my thing. But Charles he knew Gregory Davis, he knew Kevin Harris. Of course, his young brother was coming out of high school, Kirk Joesph, sousaphone player. And who else was involved? And then Janelle Marshall, and then Lionel Baptiste, who replaced Benny Jones because Benny Jones had a day job and he couldn't really go on the road, And anyway, we started rehearsing at Charles' mother's house, in which his daddy was a very famous trombone player by the name of Wardren Joesph. That played with everybody, man, played with all the cats, So we started rehearsing, but we was a traditional New Orleans band because we played traditional New Orleans music. But everybody in the band had the opportunity to bring whatever music that they wanted to play to the table. I was studying bebop and all that stuff back in there. I'm the oldest guy in the band. I'm 83 years old. I'm going on 84. So everybody else was much younger than me, which they still much younger than me anyway. So I brought my little thing to what I was doing. Some of the other cats wanted to do some Michael Jackson and some, and all of this different stuff. So we got together and we started rehearsing and mixing all of this music up. Plus, we started creating our own music. Matter of fact, there was a second line parade, it was Mardi Gras parade. We played early in the morning before the main parade started. They had what they call, it's a truck parade, So anyway, it starts like about 6 o'clock in the morning. So we was early in the morning, we started playing. And keep on playing all these different little fragments of songs, and we call it the Dirty Dozen meet the President meets the Flintstones meet the Dirty Dozen, some kind of it's one of our recordings. So we started making up different music. Then there was another club we used to play called the Glass House, where everybody, it was a little small room, man. Not too big, much bigger than this. You put 25 people, we put 100 in there. You know what I'm saying? Because you $1 to come in, and you get a plate of red beans, and you got to buy a drink called glass out. One night they had Dizzy Gillespie, Bernard Purdy sitting at the table, Manhattan Transfer in the back, and I think Fats Domino was sitting at the bar drinking a Heineken. So, you know, everybody came there, man. Everybody came to the place. It was a little neighborhood club. I think it used to be like a garage, and they turned it into a joint. You know what I mean? A bar room. And people started coming from all that, and that's kind of spearheaded our success, because we were doing something totally different. Whoa, I'm gonna leave this out. So we start bringing the music to the streets, like the music of Thelonious Monk, Charlie Parker, Duke Ellington. We start bringing all of this music to the streets, because this kind of music would be playing in ballrooms.
But this was also too the music that you grew up listening to.
Yeah. It's all of this music but some music was being played on the streets.
Right.
Nobody was playing Night Train on the street. You played that in the club, and they wasn't playing Thelonious Monk, Blue Monk, you know, and the Caravan and all these kind of songs in the street. But we brought this music to the street. We mixed it in with the traditional beat of New Orleans, and slightly picked up the groove faster. You know, I used to tell people, if you come into a second line and we playing, and if you have a weight, bring your jogging suit, your tennis shoes, and if you have a weight problem, after 4 hours of this,
You guys are almost at 50 years.
Yeah.
You've been around the world, and your music has opened up a lot of doors for a lot of people who have been upset, angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're going through some crazy times right now.
Yes, we are.
What have you noticed in these times that your music has done when you've gone to these cities, especially around the world?
What have I noticed? The response?
Yes.
You know, the music lovers gonna be music lovers. You know, they're gonna support and they're gonna show up. You know, the times are just crazy. People are really holding on to their l'argent and money, and they're really being mindful of how they spending their time. I feel to believe. But as far as responses to the music that we do, I haven't seen any change.
The second line is a very, very important part of
Tribal.
There you go. Talk to me about that.
It's tribal. It's, you know, I always look at it. You know, well, New Orleans is one of the last places they were bringing slaves in. You know, supposedly legally, quote unquote. So I think that just stayed there. You know, that's one of the things that it manifested there. It hasn't gone away yet. You know, so let's see how far that goes. You know, the landscape is changing.
It's very spiritual, like you said. And being spiritual, you know, you guys will play at a funeral.
Yeah.
You'll play a hymn.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you'll bust out into a blues song.
Yeah, well, you know, traditionally it wasn't that way. Traditionally it was a slow-paced hymn, or some people may call it a dirge. Then you would play up-tempo hymns. Yeah, that was old school. Actually, my first performance as a professional at the age of 13 was a funeral, and yeah, it was slow dirges, slow hymns, into an up-tempo hymn. There was no show songs. There were no marches. It was all gospel. But with us, you know, when we started playing, we still played to the tradition, you know. But after us, it changed. You know? But there were people they started requesting for us to do what we did musically. You know, I felt kind of funny about it. That was one of the things that the older generation was getting kind of upset about. You know, and I can understand. You know, so yeah. But now it's to where it doesn't even exist anymore that way.
Because I noticed that the 80s was really good to you guys because
we were fresh.
Yeah.
It was, you know, it was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Musically.
And it needed change.
Well, I mean, you know, I guess, you know, I mean, we didn't look at it as we just look at doing what we wanted to do musically. You know, we just felt it was a thing that needed to be done, you know. And like you say, they were those that stood against us, and there was those who stood with us. And one of the main ones for me was my dad and a lot of his musician friends from New Orleans.
They were shell-shocked, weren't they?
No, they were like, do it and do it right. Oh yeah, they were with it, but there were some other ones that, you know, what are you doing? And you know, and I just spoke to someone about that recently, and the thing was that now I understood what they're talking about, because you know the generations behind us they're not connecting.
Yeah, I can imagine. How dare you play Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, and that was the music of your generation.
Yeah, but you know, but you better look back. You know, like I had a brother that played with the Olympia Brass Band. He was one of the members of the Olympia Brass Band. And I look back over the time, and you know, they were doing things like da 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 da. So that's rock and roll. So now, like you say, I dare you tell me about with a street beat. Why not?
Don't multitask. I'm asking you to pick up your left foot. Then you're gonna pick up your right foot. First your left, then your right. And if it ain't that one, it's the other one. You ain't picking up nothing. I know you walk in there or something. Keep your hands going. Right there. Right there. Now move. Go ahead. Guys over here. Do something. Say yes, I'm going to New Orleans. I want to go see Mardi Gras. When I get down there, oh, I want to see the Zulu King. When I see that Zulu King, I'm all around all and doing. And when I see that Zulu King, I'm on rap all and doing. Say that. Wanna see that Zulu King, then I'm gonna see that Zulu Queen. Then when I see that Zulu Queen, I'm on rap all and doing. Wanna see that Zulu Queen, I'm on rap all and doing. When I see that Zulu Queen, then I wanna see that whole parade. Talk to Roger Lewis.
Gregory, this is almost 50 years, and this band has traveled internationally and opened up a lot of doors for a lot of line bands. What's your reflection of where this music is going, and what is the next generation of musicians? What are they going to have to be in tune to keep this moving?
Well, I think the music is going to be what it's going to be. Meaning that, just for instance, when we got started, the guys that were there, the older guys, they looked at us as being like radical because we weren't playing just what they were playing. We were being influenced by the music of the day. The music of the day at that time included some funk, you know, some James Brown, some Aretha Franklin, some Mahalia Jackson, some traditional New Orleans jazz. It included Miles Davis and Freddie Hubbard, and it included whatever you know you heard and experienced with this band. You were allowed to bring that into the rehearsal, and we at the time there weren't any gigs anyway, so we were just rehearsing, trying to learn some music, and whatever came out of whomever was at the rehearsal, that's what we incorporated into what we're doing. So whatever is coming next, I think will take the same path, and that the guys who have already come under us, and the younger guys that are coming up, there will always be, I think, an evolution of sorts, a turnover, because people are influenced by what they hear going around them, not necessarily what we played or what other people played. Yes, they're going to copy what we did. A lot of them have, but most brass bands that are out now are trying to, you know, be like the Dirty Dozen, play like the Dirty Dozen, whatever. But they add their own, you know, little twist to it, and that's just how it's going to be. And we can't say, well, no, you know, you ain't playing it right. You're not supposed to do this. That's what people did us when we first started playing. If we played a version of South Rampart Street Parade or something, oh no, y'all can't play like that. You know, don't play like that. We started playing a bongo beat or some Duke Ellington or whatever we want to play, and some of the older guys, and no, you know, that's not traditional. You can't play that like that. We were interested in learning how to play some music, and then the other driving force was the people that were hiring us, that were paying us to play. They wanted to hear that so-called new stuff we were playing. So I think it will happen for the next generation or whatever is next. That's what they're gonna. I hear it now when I'm a lot of the bands, they will play some what they consider to be, you know, what's R&B to them. They add that influence to their music. Now the R&B that they say they're playing today is not the R&B that I was influenced by Marvin Gaye and James Brown and Stevie Wonder and stuff like that. But the younger generation, they're adding what influences them. So what's next will be what the younger generation adds to it.
The black colleges, historical black colleges, their music program is based on horns in the second line.
Yeah.
Is that a great introduction into getting into playing this type and style of music?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that at least they're getting into it. But I think that to jump into it like in the middle, it's not to jump into it in the middle and not look back or try to get the roots of what it is, so they have a better understanding of what the music actually is. You know, it's almost easy to listen at some electric Miles Davis, but if you don't know the history of where Miles Davis came from, in the beginning, and then with the bebop and the cool and on and on and on, then you're missing the real essence of what Miles Davis is. You can imitate and play what he's playing with his electric band and all that, but I think you need to understand, how he got there. So the same thing I think would apply, to those bands that say they're getting into second line, as a marching band or as a college, HBCU. That's good that they're getting in, but if they really want to get a true feeling of what it really means, understand how it got to where it is, then you can, take that and adapt it and move on. But to just get in where it is, and just play some so-called modern dirty, you ought to take a look at where we came from to see how we got there and then move on from there.
Roger painted a picture of how this is a celebratory music.
Yeah.
Funerals, and then you break into the dance.
Yeah.
This also comes back to also the military bands during the Civil War.
Yes, sir.
How did we get to where we are with the second line?
As it was explained to me, a lot of the music came out of the churches, now, and a lot of the music had the French military influence. Louisiana was a French territory, so the way funerals were celebrated then, there were these long funeral processions throughout the church or the cathedral or whatever, and there was a military procession to the cemetery, and so on and so forth. Well, then as blacks got involved, well, they weren't really entrenched in the military anyway, but when they started to add their music being the music that came out of church, I think they kept some of the processional part of it, but they started to add their own music. So then I think you just had a mixture of the so-called French military style of celebrating funerals intermingled with the way blacks, buried their people, and that became, what people now, call second line or whatever. And second line also is a certain beat. If you're into jazz at all, a lot of times if you listen to some of the early recordings of so-called modern jazz, when the drummers played, it was all boom 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 boom. But then when the blacks started adding to New Orleans traditional music, they started syncopating. Instead of boom 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 boom. And then there were more inflections added to what people were hearing as time went on. One of the most popular and probably one of the greatest musicians of all time, Louis Armstrong, came out of the street tradition of playing music, jazz, and he was able to, just as a instrumentalist, a technician, just as a player, he was able to take the music to greater heights, but he kept that New Orleans feeling to it. And I wasn't there, but from what I've seen on film and video, what I've read, people were just so impressed that he was able to incorporate, that beat into his music, and he took it to beyond where even today, there's still people that are copying what Louis Armstrong did.
Well, he was the first African American superstar.
Yeah,
He was the first guy.
Yeah.
He was the first. And what made him great was when the mobsters chased him out of Chicago, and he went overseas, and that's when everything went complete. We talk about Louis Armstrong. He was really part of the Crescent City, the whole crux of how the music was presented. We're 2025. Is the music still going on?
The music is still going on. Technology is a mother. The advent of technology is not finished. That will always, it's going to get better. You look at Star Trek. Star Trek is happening, with Chat GPT and all this stuff. But I think the music is still going on, but now there's more of an emphasis on digitized music. I don't need to hire a band. I can play some digital stuff. One of the first inklings of what was to come. We've been coming to New York as the Dirty Dozen since the mid to late 70s or whatever, and we were able to witness the disappearance of the pit bands in the Broadway shows. You know why? Because technology made it. Well, we don't need a whole trumpet section. We can get some synthesized stuff. We don't need a brass. We don't need violins. We can and that kind of stuff is still going on. And as a result, today they're less and less dependent upon live musicians, which means they're less and less dependent upon live music. And I do other stuff other than play live music. I book entertainment also, and I book entertainment for some of the casinos. Well, there was a time when, especially the casino in New Orleans, there was a theater that featured live shows, live music. There were 3 or 4 other music stages, venues in the casino that had live music. Now, with the advent of technology as far as gaming is concerned, one of the main draws that the casinos used to use to draw people in was the buffet. We'll feed you, we'll give you eat all you want for $5, $10, whatever, because they wanted the people to come. They wanted the foot traffic to come in to gamble. Gaming is now damn near online. You don't have to leave your house. You don't even have to go to the bank. You can transfer your money from your bank account to your gambling to this, that. You don't need it anymore. You know who else know that now? The casinos. Casinos don't hire. Less and less they're doing live music. Not only in New Orleans, we used to play regularly. Some of the casinos in Las Vegas, up north, out west, all kinds. A lot of them have gotten rid of the buffets. They ain't got to feed you no more because you ain't coming. They ain't relying on that foot traffic anymore. The foot traffic with that would draw people in to eat, then they thought they had to entertain them. They have live music, and that ain't happening no more. A lot of casinos have gotten rid of their live stuff. In New Orleans, they renovated, it was Harrah's, now it's Caesars. I don't know, $100 million, $150 million. Renovated, beautiful, beautiful place. Not a stage in the place for live music. Not a stage in the casino for live music. They had been done the Fillmore, but that was a whole separate room anyway. But where once before there were 3 or 4 or 5 stages in the casino, ain't happening at all.
Wow.
So, and that's not just in New Orleans. That's in casinos all over the country. They've gotten rid of restaurants, where they did buffets and all that. And live music is just an aside. Oh, we're having a band, award show, a banquet. Oh, that's right, we got to get a band. Now instead of hiring a whole band, now they actually hire. Well, we just need a 3-piece. We don't need we can't have drums because we ain't got nowhere to put no drums. We can't do vocals because we don't have places to plug in.
So they've dumbed it down. They've dumbed it down to save a buck.
Well, dumbed it down to not spend the buck that they don't think they need. And they're in business to make money, and making money to them means getting people in to gamble. Their competition is online gaming.
Right.
You know, because no matter how much they've gotten rid of the music, they have trouble drawing people in.
One of the most important guys that really took your band from New Orleans to international is the great George Wein.
George Wein, yeah, he came to one of those McDonald 35 McDonald schools, and he heard the band. And so said, there was a guy in the band at the time by the name of Ephraim Towns. He hit a high note. Now this was told to me by a lady by the name of Dawn Griffin, and that note was ringing. And I don't know, he did something, and he took the band on his wing and recorded on the Concord labels, on the George Wein collection, and brought us all over the world. We caught the tail end where all the greats mean, we was on a open up for Miles Davis at the Capitol Jazz Festival, and Dizzy Gillespie recorded on one of our albums, Voodoo, Dizzy and Branford Marcellus, you know. So he put it at the North Sea Jazz Festival, Nice Festival, you know, all the festivals all over the world, man. This cat really, and we was fresh and we was, you know, and the people love us. Even the older guys, they love us because we was playing the kind of music they was playing. We was playing everything.
Right.
A little bit of just a little bit of that, man. It was like, and then the unique thing about the band was there's 2 trumpets, snare drum, bass drum, right? Tenor saxophone and baritone. We don't use baritone saxophone in traditional New Orleans music, so that gave it a whole different sound.
Is that because the baritone saxophone or the tuba or the sousaphone gives you that deep bass?
Yeah, well, you see the baritone, well, the way we use the baritone in the Dirty Dozen is we use it like a trumpet, and we use it as a solo instrument, and we use it like a bass. So the baritone free agent. See, sometimes the baritone player and the sousaphone player, they used to practice a lot together, you know. So the sousaphone player would play one thing, and the baritone player he think the sousaphone player should be playing, and it kind of merged together, and it kind of do a certain kind of thing, which was a very unique kind of a sound. So that's got a lot to do with the Dirty Dozen sound. You know, the earlier Dirty Dozen sound, but the band a little different now. I'm the baritone player, by the way.
But speaking of which, I want to ask you, who were some of your musical influences? Because you told me earlier you play tenor, you play soprano, you play baritone. What were some of your musical influences?
Well, my first instrument was piano. My mother was my first. She wanted me to play piano in the church. But I had a cousin by the name of Alvin Bailey. He played with a rhythm and blues guy by the name of Good Rockin' Roy Brown.
Wow.
Yeah, he played alto.
Okay.
So he's kind of, you know, he gave the alto saxophone to another cousin. My other cousin, we always was in competition. We 2 first cousins, we in competition with each other. But he didn't play it, and I wound up playing it. And when he seen me, I was playing with Fats Domino. And when I came to, because I had a family in Chicago, when I came to Chicago, I was playing with Fats, and I was playing the horn. Not the alto, I was playing baritone, you know. But my cousin really, my mother really, and you know, really, I think my mother is the one that really got me into music. I wasn't thinking about no music. I was a kid, man. I was a child, you know.
I want to ask you about New Orleans, the rhythm and blues, Dave Bartholomew and Fats Domino and Alan Toussaint. You were around all of that.
Yeah. Well, I played with Fats for about 40 some odd years, you know.
I believe, and I keep saying this, Fats Domino is criminally underrated when we talk about rhythm and blues piano players. Little Richard was kind of the exception to the rule, but Fats Domino had his own swag.
Let me tell you something. The biggest 2 stars that ever came out of New Orleans, period, Louis Armstrong and Fats Domino. Everybody else fall underneath that. All of them. You know, even Little Richard credit Fats Domino for his success, man, because Fats Domino, man, the Dave Bartholomew, that's another writer that was underrated because he discovered Fats Domino, and all of them songs, you know, they both collaborated on them songs that they wrote, man, you know, and a lot of other artists recorded a lot of Fats Domino songs, you know, but Fats Domino, man, like, his music, but what made his music so, he had this certain little country sound in his voice, right? And his music was not threatening that. He had all clean lyrics, positive lyrics. The big beat got you rocking in your seat. You know, I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill. You know, I'm gonna be a wheel someday. I'm gonna be somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Come on, man. it uplifting people. I played with the man for about 40 years, you know what I mean? Yeah, and this guy, man, he was amazing just to watch his swag when you walk out on stage, bro. You know, like, I learned a lot of stuff just by just being in his company.
And I'm gonna tell you, I think vocally, Dr. John took a little bit of a lot of what he did.
Of course he did, but I always thought Dr. Jones, there was a guy by the name of Curly Moe. He was a little local guy. He had a little hit. I forgot the name of it. But if you listen to this guy Curly Moe, and you listen to Dr. Jones, I think Dr. Jones came out of Curly Moe for as that sound of his voice.
Okay.
And there was a guy by the name of Roy Montrell that played guitar in Fast Domino Band. That's what after Papoose, which was the original guitar player, that taught Dr. Jones how to play the guitar. See, Doc used to hang out among the brothers back during segregation. Matter of fact, he went to jail by being in places where he was supposed to be. You understand? So he used to hang out with the brothers. So he developed that style by hanging out around black folks, period. And he got that sound, that little sound in his voice from Curly Moe, because I can hear it. I can hear that influence. You know, I've been around this for a long time. But Doc, I didn't know, matter of fact, I didn't even know Doc and I was the same age.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't even know. You know.
The Dirty Dozen Brass Band over the last 40 years, you guys have collaborated from the Black Crowes to
Widespread Panic.
Yeah.
Boozerley.
Yeah. Norah Jones.
Norah Jones. Was the Dave Matthews.
Yeah.
Who else?
Elvis Costello.
Elvis Costello.
B.B. King.
B.B. King. The list go on and on.
Yeah.
Alan Toussaint.
I was going to say the legacy is already etched in those different musicians and bands that you played with. What was it like really playing arena rock arenas with these massive bands, opening up for them?
I mean, you know, for me, I never, you know, it's just another gig, man. It's just more people. You know, I don't, you know, I mean, it's just more people to play for us. It's great. You know, I remember we played the Hollywood Bowl. The first time we played the Hollywood Bowl, it was like a New Orleans thing with Pete Fountain and Al Hurry. You know, that was my first time. I think that was the first time playing a big place. You know, and the money was like, it blew my mind. I never made that kind of money for half an hour. Right. You know, I said, what? That's the kind of money they got out there. Yeah. You know, I'm just saying. But I mean, it's just more people, more energy, more, you know, and it makes you play different. Really? Well, if you want, I'll tell you something else. Like if you want to build with a lot of other great musicians, you see, you got 5 or 6, you know, big acts, you're gonna play different. You're gonna bring more to the table than you would normally bring, because it's that kind of vibe, because it's high energy, man. You know, you want to do even you. You know, I remember we was in I think it was Germany, and we opened up for Buddy Rich, and we did about 4 encores. I know Buddy was ticked up. A lot of them guys didn't want us to go on first. They didn't want to follow that kind of energy. That kind of energy, man. You know, it was, you know, a lot of them didn't want to do that. See, no, look, you know, let me go on first. Let them, you know, blah blah blah. And a lot of them wanted us to open up for them because of the energy. You know, we was hungry too. You know, it's a different kind of thing. But over the years, you know, personnel has changed. You know. Well, now we have our tenor player, which is Kevin Harris. He's sick. He can't perform anymore. The trumpet player, Ephraim Towns, he's no longer with us. He's one of the original ones. He's going through his thing, and we lost the original snare drum player. We lost Janelle Marshall, and then we just lost Lionel Baptiste, one of the original members. So a lot of the guys, that very first band, the first traveling band, of course, was Benny Jones for a minute, Then Lionel Baptiste Jr. replaced them. Then we had Janelle Marshall, Gregory Davis, Kevin Harris, Kirk Joesph, Charles Joesph, and myself, Roger Lewis. You know, that was the band that opened the door. You know, but as we went through, we changed personnel quite a few times. At one time we had a keyboard player. We had Richard Knox and Frederick Sanders and Carl Roussel. You know, these different cats came through the band. A lot of people don't came through this band. You know, like right now we have a young tenor player. He's sound like Coltrane. Travari Hubboon, and we have a trombone player, Stephen Walker. And you gonna stay for a show tonight?
Yes.
So you're gonna hear that, man. These two young guys, man. Jesus Christ. Then we have a drummer, Julian Addison. He's from Dayton, Ohio. You know, and we have a Japanese guitar player. You know, Takesh. I never could pronounce that man's name.
It's okay. It's all right.
And I'm married to a Japanese woman.
Wow.
You know, so, you know, got all these, that's what the band consists of right now. Of course, Gregory Davis, you know, who do a lot of vocalizing and whatnot. But over the years, a lot of guys came through the band, you know, and whatnot. A lot of guys came through the band and set in and whatnot. Even Bradford Marcellus and Winton in the earlier days when we was really getting it together. Everybody wanted a little piece of dozen, so we wanted to come in there and get some of that grease too, you know.
Right.
Yeah, you know, it's that kind of thing, you know. But it's all good, clean, and happy party music, and it's everything. It's like a big pot of a big musical gumbo. You know, you mix it up and all the ingredients is good.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at the Blue Note, here in the heart of the West Village, here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank Mr. Roger Lewis, Mr. Gregory Davis, and Mr. Kirk Joesph, the co-founding members of the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, for their time. For more information on their upcoming tour dates or to order their music online, please visit them at www.dirtydozenbrassband.com. And also follow them on social media by way of Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Blue Note for their warm hospitality. For more information on directions as well as upcoming show dates, please visit them online at bluenotejazz.com. As always, people, I can't stress this more than enough. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as leave comments. And also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time.